All right, we're going to build this shopping cart API from the ground up. So we'll start with our database, then we'll create our entities, and finally the API. So back to IntelliJ, let's go to the database window. Here's our database. Let's add a new table called carts. Now we should give this two columns. The first one is the ID column. Now in the PDF that I gave you, I told you that MySQL doesn't support UUID columns. So to store UUID values, we have two options. We can use varchar of 36 or binary of 16. The binary type is more efficient. It takes less storage and it has a better indexing performance. So we'll use binary 16. Now this cannot be null. Now we can give this a default expression. Now in MySQL, we have this function UUID. This returns a varchar. Now we have to take that varchar and pass it to UUID to bin. This will convert that to a binary. Now we have to wrap this whole thing in parentheses, otherwise we'll get an error. Next we add another column, date underline created. And for the data type we use date. We don't care about the time component, so date is enough. In the future, we can use this column to find and delete abandoned carts. Let's say a user adds a bunch of items to their shopping cart, but doesn't place an order after 20 days. We can treat that cart as an abandoned cart, okay? So all we need here is a date, and again, this cannot be null. Now we can give this a default expression. In MySQL, we have this function cart date, that is short for current date. Again, we have to wrap this in parentheses. Next, we add our primary key, which is the ID column. ID, okay. Now, we are not going to apply this to our database. We're going to grab this script and put it in a migration. So copy this. Now cancel. Back to our project. Here in the resources directory inside the migration directory, we currently have a single migration that is V1. Now we're going to add V2. So we right click here and add a new file, V2. Make sure to add 2 double underscores as a separator. Otherwise, Flyway is not going to detect this migration file. Now we give this a descriptive name like create cart tables.sql. We paste our script here. Now let's create the second table, cart items. So back to the database window, we add a new table. This one is cart items. We should give it 4 columns. The first one is ID. We use big int so we don't have limitations. This cannot be null, and we make it auto increment. Then we add cart ID, and this should be binary 16. Again, it cannot be null. Next, we add product ID. This should be big int and not null. And finally, we add quantity. Int is sufficient for this column, but it cannot be null. Now, optionally, we can give this a default expression. We can initialize it to 1. So if we manually insert data in our database, we don't have to provide a value for this column. Next, let's add our primary key. That should be the ID column. Now here we need 2 foreign keys, one on the cart ID, the other on the product ID column. So we go to the foreign keys folder and add a foreign key referencing the cart table. Well, it's not coming up here because we haven't applied that migration yet. So let's keep going even though we don't get IntelliSense here. So the target table should be carts. We add a column. We want to map the cart ID column in this table to the ID column of the carts table. Let's add one more foreign key. This one should reference the products table. And here we map the product ID column to the ID column of the products table. Now down here on delete and update. Now we don't want to touch on update because primary keys shouldn't change. But what if we delete a product? Well, if that product is in someone's shopping cart, we should delete that product because we don't want to allow people to order products that don't exist. So here we set on delete to cascade. Now similarly, let's look at the relationship between carts and cart items. Again, we're going to leave onUpdate as is. But what if we delete a cart? Well, it makes sense to delete all the cart items as well. So we set onDelete to cascade. Now, in this table, I also want to add a unique constraint on the combination of cart ID and product ID columns. So we don't have the same product twice in the same cart. If you add a product multiple times, we just have to update the quantity, right? Now, how can we add a unique constraint? Well, we right-click the keys folder and add a unique constraint. We give it a descriptive name. This is not a primary key, so I'm going to remove PK and say cart underline product underline unique. Now here we add two columns. One is cart ID. The other is product ID. Okay. Now let's copy our script, cancel, back to our migration file, and paste it here. Now let's run our migration. So we go to the Maven window and open plugins, next Flyway, and migrate our database. All right, our database is successfully migrated. Let's verify that we have all these tables. So let's refresh. Okay, here's the carts table with two columns, ID and date created, beautiful. And we also have cart items. Now, to make sure that our database is in a good shape, let's add some data here. So let's open the carts table and add a couple of rows. Now, both these columns have a default expression, so we don't have to provide a value. If we submit the changes, we can see that we have two UUIDs here as well as two dates. Now let's grab one of these and insert a cart item. So in this table, we set the cart ID to this value. For product ID, I use 1. I'm not sure if we have this product. Let me quickly check. So here's the products table. I don't have that, so product 5, let's use that. Product 5. And for quantity, I use 5. Let's submit the changes. Good. Now, let's test our unique constraint. So I'm going to use the same cart ID and the same product, different quantity. Let's submit the changes. Now we get an error down here. So our database prevents us from inserting bad data. This is really important. If your database is in a good shape, you can prevent a lot of bugs in the future. Okay. So we are done with this step. Next, we're going to define our entities.